My introduction to Star Wars Legends was messy. For years, I would go to the library or bookstores, see dozens of novels labeled Star Wars. Maybe I'd even pick out one and bring it home, but as soon as I opened it, I had no idea what was going on, who the characters were, or where it took place. I'd close the book just as often as I started it, and it wasn't until a force-driven occurrence when my uncle gave me the Thrawn trilogy of novels that I actually really started to get into Legends. Fortunately, the crew at Youtini has done the work for you, so you don't have to be confused like me. We've created a guide to getting started into Legends, so no matter what your interests are, you'll know exactly where to jump in. So with that, let's get into Legends. Hi everyone, I'm Nathan Emery, content creator at Youtini, and I'm here to give you all the basics to get started in the world of Star Wars Legends. But before we jump in, let's start with the sponsor of today's video. This video is brought to you by Audible. Now, if you've never listened to a Star Wars audiobook before, you're missing out. The production quality, narration, story, it's all through the roof. Trust me, you're gonna love it. Now, I know how difficult it can be to sit down and go through the many Star Wars novels out there. I mean, with the demands of school, work, just life, it can be difficult to find the peace and quiet to sit down for a few minutes and turn through some pages. Putting on an audiobook while you do the dishes, go for a run, go on your daily commute is the perfect way to keep up to date with the Star Wars universe. And you're gonna love this. If you use Youtini's link to sign up for Audible, your first book is on us. Like, completely free, no strings attached. Don't know which one to pick up? One of our favorites is Dooku Jedi Lost. It's actually an audio drama, so it was made for this format. It uses a full cast and the narration is really fantastic. It's a little on the shorter side, but it's definitely a fantastic read to pick up. Of course, you can also use your audiobook credit to pre-order the upcoming Dr. Aphra audio drama, which we're also stoked about. So again, sign up with the link in our description to get your first book on Audible completely free. And we're back. Now, books have been a part of the Star Wars universe since the beginning. The first book was actually a novelization of the film called Star Wars From the Adventures of Luke Skywalker, and it came out before A New Hope was even released. Not knowing how well this new sci-fi flick would do at the box office, George Lucas then commissioned Alan Dean Foster to write Splinter of the Mind's Eye, which is the first true Legends novel. Now, that book was originally intended as a low-budget sequel, but with the phenomenal success of the first film, the world of Star Wars books was blown into hyperspace. Hundreds of books followed, blazing the trail into what we now affectionately know as the expanded universe. So what exactly is Star Wars Legends? Well, for over 35 years, authors created books, comics, young adult novels, children's books, all about the universe outside of the Star Wars films. So they would expand and explore the characters and the locations outside of the films that we're already familiar with. Of course, with that much material, it can be difficult to know where to start. Fortunately for you, Youtini is here to help. Now, if you're kind of confused as to why there's canon and Legends, two completely different sets of Star Wars books, you can check out our video on the same topic. The link to that will be down below. So the Star Wars Legends timeline encompasses over 25,000 years, from the rise of the Jedi and Sith to the Clone Wars to the rise and fall of the Empire to generations beyond that. With the sheer volume of years and the number of titles this all encompasses, it can be difficult to kind of figure out where to start. And aside from the sheer number of years, the Legends timeline can get a little bit messy. Some books span a number of years. For example, Darth Plagueis starts 67 years before the Battle of Yavin, but ends just before the Phantom Menace, so much closer. Other books kind of overlap, such as the Han Solo Adventure series by Brian Daley, which takes place sometime in the middle of Rebel Dawn, which is the last book in the Han Solo trilogy by A.C. Crispin. See what I mean by messy? Fortunately, Youtini's got you covered on that too. We've got an interactive timeline where you can click around, you can play with Legends, canon, different time periods, what kind of books you want to see, so you can see exactly where everything lines up in the Star Wars universe. But before we jump into Star Wars Legends, I had a quick question for you. Do you need more friends who are as passionate about Star Wars books as you are? If you do, Youtini has a vibrant and positive community over at our Discord. We'd be honored to have you join us at youtini.com/discord or at the link in the description below. Back to Legends. Okay, so I've convinced you. You are going to read Star Wars Legends. Now there's an obvious question that we get all the time, and that's, where do I start? Given the number of books and the way we just kind of talked about the timeline, it might seem like jumping in chronological order makes the most sense. And in fact, that's often what's recommended as kind of the easiest way. Start with a book early in the timeline and then just keep moving on chronologically through until you've reached the end. We believe that's actually not the way to go though. It's really difficult to get invested in the Star Wars Legends universe if you go chronologically. You'll start with books way before anything you're familiar with, and then as you move through, you'll find time periods that are just a few years in universe, but contain as many as 50 books. It can be overwhelming, and so going through chronologically is the best way to burn out on Star Wars books. And of course, if you go through chronologically, you're going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel, reading some of those Star Wars novels that just, well, haven't aged too well. So where should you start? Well, Youtini has a few books that we believe are foundational to getting started with Star Wars Legends. The first book we recommend is actually the Revenge of the Sith novelization by Matthew Stover. Wait, hold on, Nathan. A novelization as my first book? Yes, trust us, you're gonna love it. This book expands an already fantastic story with new scenes, tone shifts, and adjustments approved by George Lucas himself. It's emotional, it's gripping, and it really is a great place to start with Star Wars Legends. Our second foundational book from the prequel era is Kenobi by John Jackson Miller. This is a book about, you guessed it, Obi-Wan Kenobi. As you're reading it, you can just feel how much love for the character and for Star Wars went into this book. It's a fantastic read. Our final two foundational books are actually the first books in trilogies. The first takes place during the Old Republic, well before the prequels, and that's Darth Bane: Path of Destruction. It's the first book in the Darth Bane trilogy, which showcases a lot about the origins of the Sith as you kind of come to learn them in the movies, about the Rule of Two and things like that. It's also just fantastically written. The characters are gripping and compelling, and the story is really interesting, and you get some great insights into the origins of the Sith. Now, if you're looking for something a little closer to the original trilogy, our final foundational recommendation is Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn. Now, this is the first book in what is known as the Thrawn trilogy of Legends novels, which many credit with revitalizing the Star Wars universe in the 90s. Zahn is a master at creating deep and complex characters. Plus, you'll get to see some of your old favorites like Luke Skywalker. As I mentioned, this is the trilogy that got me into Legends, and I can't recommend it enough. So we recommend that you start with these foundational novels, which will kind of give you a taste of the best that Legends has to offer. And as always, links to these books are in the description down below. Once you've gone through the foundational novels, there's a few different ways to proceed. One way to proceed is to use the Youtini reading order, also linked below, which groups books into 4 different levels based on the story, the characters, how necessary they are to Legends, and just how good they are. You can start with the level 1 Legends books, which are kind of the top tier novels, and then work your way down the list. You can also use the foundational novels to figure out which era you're kind of most interested in. Did you really enjoy seeing the origins of the Jedi and Sith in Darth Bane, or are you more of a Clone Wars prequels kind of person? Or are you an original trilogy fan looking for more of what happens to Han, Luke, Leia, and characters like that? Once you've figured out which era you're most interested in, you can use the Youtini reading order to kind of cross-reference books. You can look at books from that era that are in level 1 of the Youtini reading order, and of course you can also have the Youtini timeline open so you can see where the books take place. So you can look at the Youtini reading order, find the book in level 1, and then find it on the timeline and see where it takes place so you can kind of keep track of where you are in the timeline. So if you're like, Nathan, that's too confusing, I can't look through the timeline, through the Youtini reading order, cross-referencing, all that is not for me. Another great way to get started with Legends is its series. That's a great and unique aspect of Legends actually. It's got tons of series, some as long as 19 books. So the new characters we get to meet in these series have these long kind of galactic scale arcs, and we really get to know them and care about them. One great series is the Han Solo trilogy by A.C. Crispin. Now, before the 2018 movie came out, A.C. Crispin's trilogy kind of showed us the origin story of Han, from his rough days on Corellia, to his racing period, to his days in the Imperial Navy, all the way up to that fateful encounter in the Mos Eisley Cantina. If you're a fan of the character, and let's be honest, who isn't? This is a must-read. Another great series is Rebel Commando by Karen Traviss. Now, this is a 5-novel series that ties into the video game Republic Commando. It follows Omega Squad, which is made up of clone troopers who are each the last surviving members of their individual units. It goes through the Clone Wars, the fall of the Republic, and the rise of the Empire. So if you're a fan of clone troopers, military battles, and action, this is a great series to start with. Then there's the X-Wing series of novels by Michael Stackpole and Aaron Alston. Now, this is a 10-book series that follows the creation of 2 different X-Wing squadrons created by the rebel hero Wedge Antilles. Now, these books primarily cover a 6-year span starting after the end of Return of the Jedi, though the last book in the series takes place 40 years after that movie. It's a series full of space battles, espionage, and political intrigue. Now, the New Jedi Order series is the 19-book series I talked about, and this chronicles the invasion of an alien species from outside of the galaxy as we know it. Now, Luke Skywalker and the handful of Jedi Knights at his side are all that stands between this invading force and everything that the New Republic has built. Now, this book takes place about 20 years after the Battle of Endor, so it's a little later. So it might be best to kind of familiarize yourself with books that take place in between, like the Thrawn trilogy, before you jump into this huge series. So there you have it. I hope I've helped you get a grip on kind of where to start with the Star Wars Legends universe and made it just a little bit less daunting. You'll find it an enjoyable and rewarding experience no matter where you start. So whatever of these recommendations or ones you find on Youtini.com sound the most interesting, that's the place to start. And remember, there's no right way to read Star Wars books. Everyone goes at their own pace. Everyone starts at a different place. The only right way to read Star Wars books is the one that keeps you turning the pages. And if you're looking to really dive further into the books, hit us up at The Living Force, the official podcast of Youtini, or catch the show live every Monday at 7 p.m. at twitch.tv/Youtini_US. And of course, that link will also be in the description. And you can visit us online at Youtini.com for reading guides, timelines, reviews, and so much more about all the Star Wars books, both Legends and canon, that the Star Wars Expanded Universe has to offer. Thanks for watching, friends, and as always, may the Force be with you.